And it can be super frustrating because
Yeah.
sometimes something works and you're super happy. You're like, I cracked it. And the next time you try that same technique, it doesn't work at all
Yep.
because you don't know what cracked it. Was it the thumbnail, the title, the content itself? Was it reshared by someone because that specific topic was super interesting? Unless you go into the super detailed analytics of every video, of every single video that worked out, you don't know what worked.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't have time for that. I don't want to. So I'm
Yeah.
just making my stuff. My thumbnails are almost always the same. And I don't care because like people watch them enough that it works for me.
Well,
So
I
I
think with,
stopped bothering with that.
I think with your thumbnails, they are so your channel. Like, if I see a thumbnail in your style, I know instantly, without seeing the name, without seeing anything else about it, where that video is from.
But that was the goal, to have a very recognizable thing, because in the subscription feed, like people have 30, 40, 50, 100 channels. And
Yeah.
so first, not everything is shown because like it's supposed to be a feed of all your subscriptions, but it's not. Some videos are just not going to appear,
It
which
hasn't been a feed of everything for like a good 10
yeah, it's
years.
stupid. It's stupid. And so you need to stand out a little bit. So I don't want to do the weird faces because I never like them, and like no shade on people who do it.
Weird
I
faces
understand it.
and Hawaiian
Yeah.
shirts.
Exactly, but it works. I mean,
works.
it's been proven for a lot of channels that it works. For me, it never did. Every time I tried it, I got less clicks and less interaction, probably because I didn't start with them. So I don't want to do them. And so I needed something that is flashy and very visible. And I think like this white, big fat white cutout with very colored backgrounds, I think it pops out compared to everything else that's done. And so sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes the topic is just not interesting. But that's what you have to contend with, basically. You never know if something you make is going to work well or not. You can always be surprised. For example, I made a Unix, how Linux ate Unix video. I was expecting this to perform super poorly. Like it's a history lesson on an OS that no one has used for 20 years. No one cares about this. It's got more than 100,000 views in less than a month. And stuff like, hey, is FlatHub going evil? I was expecting this one to perform really well, and it really didn't.
Yeah.
You never know. You never know. It's the weird thing with YouTube. And sometimes you just fail multiple times in a row, and this starts getting depressing. Like when the 3 or 4 latest videos are just not performing according to expectations, you start feeling not attacked, but worried. And that's something you have to deal with as a YouTuber.
Yeah, you always love seeing 10 out of 10 videos. They're great.
Oh, that's the worst. Sometimes you know it's going to be 10 out of 10. So you're like, okay, it's going to be the worst, but that's something I like. I want to talk about it. I'm doing it anyways. Like stuff that I did on the Fediverse and Mastodon, I knew was just not going to work all that well. I knew it.
There was a period where if you got that out like as... You know, everyone was freaking out about Mastodon, about Twitter. I think then, they popped off. Like, I had a video from, I think, 2 years ago about how to actually get started on Mastodon. That video, like, spiked up, even though no one's watched it in ages when that happened. During that period, if you got something out then, but as, like, a typical thing, no one really cares.
No one cares all that much. And I, for example, now realize that I made a strategic mistake in my content production, because I had planned a video on Mastodon and I had planned a video on the Fediverse. And I went logically like, I'm going to start with the Fediverse, explaining what it is, and I'll make the Mastodon video later. But if I had been clever, I would have released the Mastodon video as people were like, oh, we need to move to Mastodon. And I would have explained the Fediverse later. And as a result, the Fediverse video did relatively well, like 80,000 views in total in a few months, which is decent. But the Mastodon video that I released a month after everyone freaked out just didn't work at all.
Yeah.
So should have switched them, and probably the Mastodon video would have done a lot better, but the Fediverse video would also have done a lot worse. It's sometimes you have to make those decisions. It's basically like any other job. You have to decide stuff, except you never know that your decision will work in the current context. You have less clues than usual, basically.
Yeah. I think the only stuff you can be certain on is when it's something like Ubuntu 23.04.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
things
that's
like...
gonna...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or...
Yeah, or just like the latest version of KDE, the latest version of GNOME, or the
Yeah,
latest
yeah.
Ubuntu, a relatively well-known distro new release. Of course, that's gonna do some views. Yes, generally it will. But everything that is based on a news piece or an opinion or something, you never know. You never know if people are going to get interested in them.
I think, like, one that I'm surprised popped off is I see replacing Google Drive, OneDrive, or iCloud with these better alternatives. That did almost 200k views. Like, I would not think that video would do that well.
Almost every video I made for replacing Google services worked relatively well. They almost all did relatively well. Yeah, and I mean I remade a few because like the first I made were like 4 years back when I filmed myself with my phone, and it was just like the quality. There was no script. They were garbage. So I just wanted to remake them to be more modern. And some of the options I talked about just disappeared in the meantime, or I've changed. So. But yeah, generally all the privacy related stuff generally does not do all that well, but the de-googling stuff kind of does on my channel.
Okay.
Like if it's just how to be more private using this thing, no one cares. But if it is alternatives to Google services, then yeah, a lot of people are going to be interested, at least on my channel. But I also started addressing these topics like 3 years ago or 3 or 4 years ago, so...
Yeah, I feel like
probably people subscribe exclusively for that kind of stuff, basically.
I feel like every time I have an inkling of an understanding of what's gonna do well, I upload something that should, by all accounts, do really well. And then, no. Not at all. And
I have the exact same issue, yeah.
But
you're like, this one, oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, this one, I can't wait to post it. You publish it, you look 30 minutes later, and you're like, what? No, what? Come on, there's a bug. No, there's no bug. Just that you don't know. Like maybe YouTube didn't think there was an ad they could place on it, and so they never promoted it because they couldn't make money off of it. It can be anything.
Funnily enough, there have actually been bugs a couple of times when that happened. Like, I upload a video where I'm like, this video is going to do super well. I wake up and it's like 100 views. Like, when it's that bad, I'm like, okay, you know something is wrong right now.
Yeah. It hasn't been correctly made public, or it hasn't been sent to anyone, or there's an issue there. Absolutely, yeah.
Occasionally,
and sometimes it just takes a few hours to catch up. Like, at some point, I had a video that it was really underperforming, like probably like it was my first video ever. Terrible. I'm like, it can't be. Like, I can understand that people would not be that interested, but this kind of low performance is just not possible. It's not possible. And it just took, I don't know, an hour or two to actualize the counter of views. It just stayed stuck. And at some point it's like, oh, you had 300 views? No, you 3,500. Oh, okay. Well, that seems bad, but that's better.
Yeah,
it's YouTube is weird.
When you're dealing with a platform as big as YouTube, it's going to be eventual consistency. It's going to be, at some point, things will line up and it will give you proper data, but... And that's the same reason why if you look at your dashboard and you look at the video, the number of views are going to be different. Yeah. Because there's different systems tracking these numbers. And yeah, when you have a server that goes across the entire world, you don't want to have it so it's always consistent. If you do that, then everything is just going to be constantly locking up. It's better to like have the numbers be wrong and then deal with it later, pretty much.
And usually you're going to see more views when you're checking out like YouTube Studio than what people will actually see under the video.
Yeah.
Because YouTube Studio will give you just every single view, and the YouTube player will check and stay, and it's gonna stash some views on the side to check if they are bot related or anything. What you're seeing as a creator is generally less filtered than what you're seeing as a user, which makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, at the end of the day, you probably shouldn't be looking at the numbers that often anyway. Just like let the video do its thing. If it's not performing well, no amount of watching, this is something I've had to deal with. No amount of watching the video is going to make the numbers do better. Just
absolutely
make the next one. Hopefully the next one does better. Try to work out maybe some way to change up what you're doing. What matters in the end is if you're making good content and you're putting in a reasonable amount of effort in titling it and thumbnailing it, it is going to get attention over time. over time.
Yeah. Unless you're talking about a very specific event that only matters for like 3 days in a year, like every video will start picking up at some point. It's very rare to have a video that stays stuck and gains 0 more views after it's published. Most of them will keep climbing up a little bit slowly and slowly. And that's also what makes YouTube viable as a job in the long run. The longer you do it, and the more of these, like, I think everybody calls them evergreen videos. They're like videos that always stay relevant, or at least stay relevant for a long time. The more you have of these, and the more you keep posting, at some point, those evergreen videos are going to represent like half of your monthly revenue on YouTube and half of your monthly views. And so the more you make, the more you have that baseline. And it also insures you against like very bad months when none of your videos perform well.
Yeah.
And that's also why you cannot just quit your job and become a YouTuber after your first video. Unless you're insanely lucky or talented, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
You have to have that let's say, stash of older videos that can generate those views.